1D6 made several videos on Mythic Games and the requested contribution for 6 Siege. This is our third and for the time being last video on this topic. We'll address the last updates with the important FAQs and the contribution threshold. Let's put the issue to bed and discuss the latest details of the Kickstarter nightmare that Mythic Games has created. So before we begin, we strongly advise you to check out our video of the 19th of March where we began to discuss the reorganization within Mythic Games in order to keep the company afloat. Please find a link in this video at the top of the screen. And secondly, check out our video of the 2nd of May where we extensively discussed the contribution that Mythic Games requested for 6 Siege. You'll find a link to this video at the top of your screen too. In this third video, we'll try to wrap up the whole discussion and give our final thoughts. But before we dig in, we would like to thank all our viewers, especially the ones who commented on our last videos. We really appreciate your involvement into our humble channel and we are sorry we couldn't respond to each comment individually. We're well aware that the whole Mythic Games drama is almost over and this video is a late addition to the discussion, but we do feel obliged to share our opinion as a token of our appreciation to your response to our previous videos. So Mythic Games is going through a difficult time. The company was reorganized and they had to ask backers for additional money to be able to manufacture and deliver their last projects. The first time the so-called contribution was requested was for Darkest Dungeon and the second time was for 6 Siege. A lot of 6 Siege backers were already aware of Mythic Games' financial situation but were nonetheless surprised by the requested contribution. In comparison to Darkest Dungeon, the contribution on 6 Siege was excessively high. Backers were asked for about 50% extra to their initial pledge, excluding shipping, to cover the increased cost for production, labor, transport and development. Mythic Games informed backers on the extra contribution in March. At the time they needed to figure out what to charge and they announced that the contribution would depend on the kind of pledge and the increased cost for shipping. In the April update, backers were confronted with the actual contributions per pledge. You'll need to read the text carefully, but Mythic Games did mention that the increased costs for shipping were not included in the extra contribution and would be charged separately. They did not mention any specifics on the shipping cost, except that shipping needed to be determined per region. Mythic Games intended to send emails shortly after the update to enable backers to log in onto a website to pay the contribution. But several backers did not receive the email within a couple of days after the update. This caused more frustration and distrust, especially when the first screenshots were shared by other backers of invoices with the contribution and the disappointingly high extra shipping costs. 1D6 also backed 6 Siege and went for the smooth operator pledge of $269. Shortly after the Kickstarter campaign, we paid another $51 for shipping. After the contribution update, we did not receive an email from Mythic Games, but with a workaround we managed to log on the contribution website. In this screenshot, you'll see our invoice of the $129 of contribution together with an additional $57 for shipping. This brings our grand total to $506. It kind of feels like we're paying for 2 smooth operator pledges instead of 1. So communication isn't Mythic Games' strong suit. Shortly after the April update, social media was ranting on the contribution and the poor communication. I must admit, we were a little frustrated ourselves, but you might have already noticed if you watched our last video. Mythic Games realized that they had unleashed a shitstorm and tried to patch things up by posting an FAQ update on the contribution. This update was shortly released after the video of the King of Average, who had the privilege to interview Leo Vesperini of Mythic Games. We'll put a link to this video at the top of the screen. There were 2 things that stood out for me. One, Leo was kind of disappointed with all the negative responses to the extra contribution, and secondly, Mythic Games really acts like the victim of injustice. In my opinion, Leo's reaction was a little naive, but it felt humane and sincere at the same time. One thing that Mythic Games seems to keep overlooking is that all of the backers are the actual victims of the whole situation. Mythic Games will have to endure all the trash talk, but eventually backers will cover all the extra expenses for 6 Siege. You'll have until the 24th of May to decide if you're going to pay the contribution. 6 Siege will only be shipped to the ones who contributed. I've mixed feelings regarding this decision, but it seems fair to those who went the extra mile. There is an option to alter your initial pledge. Contributions will be adjusted accordingly. And if you choose to drop out, you can get a refund. You'll need to email support@mythicgames.net to enter the refund queue. Refunds are made on a monthly basis according to a predetermined amount and a capped amount, to not endanger the Mythic Games cash flow. If I may translate, it can take a while. So Mythic Games needed a minimum amount of contributions to start the production. In the latest 6 Siege update, Mythic Games wrote that they had surpassed the threshold and are now at 151% of funding. This means that 6 Siege will be printed and delivered to backers. Before we wrap up this video, I would like to give a little more explanation to the last part of our previous video on Mythic Games. I mentioned that Mythic Games didn't care too much for backers and their previous pledges. A little of my intent was lost in translation, but what I meant to say is that the survival of Mythic Games is the first and only priority of the company. All of their efforts are meant to keep the company afloat. Some of the company's actions will be disapproved by their customers, and this is just collateral damage in order to keep the company afloat. I was very intrigued by the FAQ where Mythic Games wrote they did not plan to sell 6 Siege in retail. I think it's hard to believe that they will pass on an opportunity to create extra revenue. It did not take too long to find screenshots of pre-order sales at different board game stores. At Zatu Games, the 6 Siege base game is currently available for pre-order for about £54. This is about $68 or euros. I guess this is a sign of Mythic Games being grateful to backers who contributed and kept the company afloat. But now I'm getting cynical again. At 1D6 we were very hesitant to keep the 6 Siege pledge, but we kept the pledge eventually and paid the extra contribution. It feels like giving into extortion, but our guess is that it will be the best option. The refund process is slow and you will have to keep in mind that your pledge will only be partially refunded. For instance, transaction costs and Kickstarter fees will be deducted from the refund. But to be frank, there is no clear winner between the two options you have. You might have to take a risk and gamble that 6 Siege will become a collector's item, which is worth something on the second-hand market. To all who have not decided yet what to do, good luck with making the right choice. Be sure to decide before the 24th of May and let us know in the comments what you are going to do. For now, thank you for watching. We'll be back with an unboxing of 6 Siege once we get the game delivered. And if you like this video, please give a thumbs up or even consider subscribing for the channel. That's it for now, and I'll see you in the next video.